very good evening. You're watching the Press Preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. And it's time to see what's making the headlines with Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight, reviewing the papers as they come in. So let's have a look at what's on some of those front pages. The Times leads with that planned nurses' strike announced today. There are fears of chaos if doctors and nurses strike in the coming weeks, according to the Daily Mail. The Daily Telegraph is also leading with nurse strikes, branding them as the most extreme yet. Musk to launch AI startup to rival ChatGPT. That's on the front page of the FT. Police are set to crack down on terror groups ahead of the King's coronation. That's according to the Daily Mirror. The Daily Express leads with King's pride of both his sons, William and Harry, ahead of the coronation. The Daily Star headlining with French forecasters sneaking ahead of the British forecasters in naming the latest storm, Storm Noah. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on your screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you're watching us. But let's bring in Susie Boniface and Henry Hill, who are here to review the papers with us this evening. Great to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us. Susie, let's kick off with you, if that's OK. A lot of the front pages leading on nurses' strikes, of course, after the RCN knocking back that pay offer earlier.
Yeah, so what's happened is there's been a pay offer of about 5%. And two unions have voted on that, and the announcement came out today. One of them, the Royal College of Nurses, has sort of about 61% or so, I think it was, who most of whom, 54% of those people did vote to reject the pay offer. It was 61% turnout. And another one, Unison, had a smaller turnout at 50-something%, and they had a greater actually vote, but they had a smaller turnout to accept the offer. Now, this is kind of a bit academic because there's two more unions yet to have their results. They're coming back on April the 28th. That's GMB and Unite. They're slightly smaller, but they've also got a say in it. And what's going to happen is actually in the next couple of weeks there's something called a meeting of the NHS Staff Council. And they are going, that's where you have lots of unions and employer representatives all on there, and they vote whether or not to accept the pay offers in plural that have been made by the government, and all those unions and employers on that council have a vote that is weighted according to how big the union is, how many people they represent. And RCN and Unison have some of the biggest and most important votes on that council. So there's a process to go through yet. Everything you can see in the papers tomorrow is just like the first part of this. It is not definite what's happening next at any stage. The RCN, which had recommended its members accept this pay offer, has been told by a majority of its members that they don't want to accept it. So now the RCN is having to go back and negotiate again. The government, from their point of view, they're hoping that the unions are split and therefore that the strikes will somehow fragment. But what may well happen is the Royal College of Nursing will have to go back to its members, ballot again on strike action, and may well see that the union with the most nurses is going to be out on strike again, perhaps into the winter, maybe even into next year. This does need sorting out, and it's just very, very messy at the moment, is probably the best way to define it.
Yeah, messy is a good word, certainly. These two big health unions, very divided now on how they view this pay offer. But one thing's clear, Henry, is that this is certainly going to mean more disruption for patients. The next round of strikes is going to impact emergency care and cancer care for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be one of the things that is really concerning both the government and people who are using the NHS, is that the gloves are coming off. There will be an expansion, as you say, of the areas of the NHS which this strike will cover, including accident and emergency departments. There are also concerns in some quarters that if the RCN do proceed with this new strike action, and as Susie says, the process is not concluded yet, they may end up coordinating with the junior doctors, and that could be even more disruptive. So there is a real incentive for all parties, I think, to try and get around the table and sort this out, because whilst health unions are saying that this is not going to be leading to excess deaths, and I don't think anyone, it will to some extent. It must necessarily do that. If you're targeting accident and emergency care, that's not stuff that you can delay. That's not stuff that you can push back and reschedule. Accident and emergency care has to be provided there and then. That's what that department is for. So if you're understaffing it, or if it ends up understaffed, that is going to have a direct consequence for patients. And that is clearly something that the government should be extremely worried about, because I think that the problem the government has with all of this is that ultimately the odds of whatever public opinion is on the value of the strikes, the public will not accept a government presiding over an NHS which is actually turning away patients at the door of hospitals. It will be a sort of winter of discontent for the Conservative government. So I'm sure this is extremely worrying for Rishi Sunak and the Health Secretary.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Certainly very concerning for a lot of patients. Susie, the front page of the Daily Mail also raises another good point, that we could see nurses and junior doctors striking at the same time, because, of course, junior doctors are walking out as well at the moment.
Yeah, you could also see kangaroos hopping down the high street. It's not very likely, though, and the Royal College of Nursing has said they don't want to coordinate the strikes in that way, so that's a slightly panicky front page. In fact, all the front pages are making talking about the chaos and the disruption of the strikes, and isn't it awful? And I think we need to bear in mind that the reason these strikes are happening is because the NHS is already in chaos. It's already disrupted. There are 133,000 vacancies in the NHS because the pay is so bad, because the job retention is so bad, because the working in it itself is although it should be a prestigious and honourable career, it's not one that people do and get much pleasure out of sometimes, it would seem. And that means that's 133,000 vacancies. That's almost 10% of the NHS total workforce, right? We're 10% down already. And how does the editor of the Daily Mail or the Times or the Telegraph, how does anyone think that NHS is not already in chaos if you've only got 90% of the staff that you need? And of course, some of them are going to be off sick, some of them are going to be on holiday, some of them are going to be having a rest day on their rota. You just do not have enough people and enough money in that system to operate that system. And there hasn't been for probably a decade. And that's the chaos and the disruption that we've already got. And so I think it's a bit rich, really. I mean, lots of the newspapers have, to be perfectly fair, been reporting for years about the growing problems in the NHS. I don't think all of them have necessarily attributed them correctly. But the fact that we have the chaos and the disruption of strikes, of a day here and a couple of days there, maybe 4 days in the other direction kind of thing, when the people are on picket lines, I think it is quite incredible that this is being seen as the thing that's causing the NHS's problems. We all remember. We all remember what happened a couple of years ago. We all know what was happening before the pandemic. We all know what happened during austerity. We know where these problems have come from. So the tone of the government and the NHS employers and some of the media about how this is somehow the fault of the strikes, that we have the backlogs and the problems and the issues in the NHS, is not going to fly, I think, with the public. And as Henry has pointed out, I mean, at the moment, there's more than 50% of the public in polls are fully supportive of these strikes. And so the government doesn't have much case here. They're going to have to come back with a bigger offer, because the alternative is political suicide.
Yeah, you raise a very good point in terms of how the front pages are covering it, very much focusing on the disruption. Susie, Henry, thanks very much. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Coming up, President Biden in tears in County Mayo. We'll tell you why after this short break. Welcome back. You're watching the Press Preview, and with me now is Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. Good to see you both again. Henry, to you first, if I may. A really moving story that we saw unfold in Ireland today on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Joe Biden reduced to tears by a priest who'd met his son before he died. Tell us more about that.
Oh, well, you summed it up quite nicely, basically. Joe Biden was visiting a Catholic shrine in the Republic of Ireland, and apparently this was completely unplanned, and he didn't know about it. One of the priests who worked at the shrine was actually the one who delivered the last rites to the president's late son before he passed away. So an incredibly moving moment for Joe Biden, reduced to tears, I think, quite understandably, and a very humanizing moment, which helps to, often I think we see politicians only as either sort of hate figures or in their pomp, and it's always nice to be not, obviously the circumstances are quite horrible, but it's always nice to be reminded of the human side of these people that we shout at and say mean things about. So that's the story.
Yeah, well summed up, Henry. I'm sorry if I stole your punchline there. Susie, your take on Joe Biden's visit to Ireland. I mean, obviously he's got, very strong family connections, but there seems to be a lot of electoral logic as well in terms of a lot of US presidents choosing to go to Ireland before an election year.
Yeah, there's some votes to be won in it, I'm sure, for Biden. He's about as Irish as I am, which is not very. It's a couple of hundred years ago in the 19th century. Quite a lot of people were Irish, and it seems that when you go to America, you sort of become more Irish the further away you get from it. Whereas the rest of us, we are of where we are born. I mean, Joe Biden's an American. He's not Irish, no matter how much it might suit him or how much he might have nostalgia for the old country. He's American, not Irish. I don't begrudge the man his trip or his moment with the priest. I don't begrudge County Mayo and other places the chance to sort of claim the leader of the free world as one of their own. Well done. It seems a bit much, though, if I was a taxpayer that was footing the bill for some of this, that he's basically having an old American man's trip, a family holiday, in effect, and calling it a state visit. It's a holiday. It's the kind of thing lots of men in their 80s might go and do if they've got some Irish background. I think it's sweet, but useless.
Susie, I love your cynicism there. A quick thought from you, Henry, on the front page of the FT, Elon Musk to launch an AI startup to rival ChatGPT.
I mean, for me, this is sort of finally Elon Musk going back to, what I think Elon Musk is for. If you're going to have a crazy tech billionaire, you don't want him wasting time buying Twitter, right? Elon Musk, whatever you think of his politics or his personality, he was investing in going to Mars, he was investing in electric cars, he was investing in sort of all this kind of stuff. And now he said he's going to launch a challenger company to the main AI. And that's actually a really important story because AI is going to be transformative. The technology is coming along in leaps and bounds. And we've already seen the perils of having this technology in the hands of one American company. There was one of the graphic AIs we found globally, you can't use it to mock the Chinese government because the CEO of that company wants to make money in China. So having competition on these important technologies is really important. And I hope that Elon Musk makes a better job of it than he has of Twitter.